I would like to thank the Nova Economics Club and the Nova Students Union for inviting me to this closing ceremony of the 2021 edition of Economia Viva. What I'll try to do in the next 12-13 minutes or so is to share a few messages that reflect the angle through which central banks address certain topics that impact the life of each and every economic agent, be it an individual or a company. But before moving into the messages, let me just say that I have the highest level of appreciation for this event, which since its first edition is fully organized by the students and not only mobilizes an impressive number of speakers, but also reaches thousands of viewers, both in Portugal and abroad. The relevance of the topics that have been discussed during this week and the quality of the speakers who preceded this closing session make it already a reference in the annual cycle of economic conferences in our country. And although I'm sure that the organizers would rather have both the speakers and the attenders physically present in the brand new and fantastic facilities that Nova University has, this also illustrates how behind every adversity usually lies a great opportunity for those who are capable not only of spotting it but also of seizing it. And for all that and much more that could be said, I want to congratulate the Nova students and all those who made this event possible. The topics of this year, which address health, digital and globalization, they clearly illustrate that this is a challenging time for the economy and also for policymakers, which include central banks. Central banks like Bank of Portugal, they have typically two mandates. One is safeguarding the price stability and the other is preserving financial stability. These two mandates, they are interconnected. They reinforce each other in a relation that is known in the literature as twin winds. In my remarks, today I will focus on the responsibility to preserve financial stability, but given the magnitude of the topic and what I've selected to focus on, an image that occurred to me to illustrate the level to which the topic is being condensed is to compare it to the equivalent of compacting the planet Earth to the size of the Berlengas Island or even to the Bugio, just to make it more clear from Nova's campus perspective. To move into the topic, what I'll first try to do is to share a brief explanation about the frequently misunderstood concept of financial stability and why it is so important to preserve it. And secondly, I will very briefly mention one of the main challenges ahead as far as preserving financial stability is concerned and what we at Bank of Portugal are doing to address such challenge. And the challenge that I'm referring to is not the pandemic, it is climate change. And let me start by what financial stability refers to and why it is important to preserve it. If I had to select an object to illustrate what the economy looks like, one possibility would be to say that the economy is like an engine, and this very special engine would consist of two different parts. One key part is the financial system, where you have components such as financial intermediaries, markets, and market infrastructures. The role of the financial system is to help money flow through the economy from where it exists, which correspond to those who save it, and move it to where it is needed, when it is needed, and for as long as it is needed, which correspond to those who invest it, with these two, savers and investors, being the other part of the engine. In order for this essential function to work well, we need a stable financial system that is capable of channeling the money to transform the maturities and also to handle the risks. The value of financial stability is probably best illustrated when we are faced with the absence of financial stability. So it's better seen in periods of financial instability. And during these periods, banks are reluctant to finance profitable projects. Asset prices tend to deviate excessively from their intrinsic value, and payments may not arrive on time. And major instability can also lead to bank runs or a stock market crash. It can severely shake confidence in the finance and the economic system. The financial crisis we've seen in 2008 showed us just how important a financial system is. The flow of money across the economy was disrupted at that time. Financial markets became very unstable. It was very difficult to borrow money, and people in business, they suffered greatly. And since the crisis, several changes have been introduced to make sure that the financial system remains stable, even in difficult times. New institutions, new rules, they have made the financial system a lot more stable. But even with such rules, financial crises, they can still happen, as there are always many factors which can lead to financial instabilities. Some of those factors are well known and more closely monitored, given the role they've had in previous crises. And they are monitored not just at national level, but also at international level, due not only to the integration we've had in some regions, we can use Europe as an example, but also due to the way countries are more and more interconnected, both economically and also financially. Apart from these better known factors, there are also a significant number of other factors that can also be extremely relevant and impactful, such as, for instance, cyber threats, global dependence on a small number of software companies and their respective solutions, globally supply chains disruptions, geopolitical tensions, just to name a few. And among all these major potential threats to financial stability, one that clearly stood out from the crowd since a few years ago, and not only has kept that position standing up from the crowd, but will likely stay that way for the foreseeable future, it's climate change. And this takes me to the second point I would like to address today, which is about the risks to financial stability deriving from climate change and what is Banco of Portugal doing about it. The risks to financial stability deriving from climate change, they can be divided into main categories, one being physical risks and the other being transition risks. When it comes to physical risks, that is related to the more frequent and intense natural disasters such as wildfires, hurricanes, or long-term effects on environmental degradation, such as pollution, higher temperatures, or loss of biodiversity. When it comes to transition risks, basically it is related to regulatory changes or tax changes, technological developments, shifts in consumer preferences, or even litigation, which will inevitably will move along the transition to a greener economy. Both types of risks, they translate into very relevant economic risks for companies, and also into probably even more relevant financial risks for banks, asset managers, and insurance. And the reason for such relevance results from the fact that physical and transition risks, they affect the availability and also the valuation of assets that are funded or are used as a collateral by financial institutions. Thereby, this impacts their balance sheets. So climate-related risks, therefore, they need to be actively monitored and managed and adequately priced. One short parenthesis just to mention that for economists, prices, when correctly set, they and in order to correctly set them. This implies taking into account externalities, be it positive or negative. They are one of the most, if not the most powerful tool to influence the behavior of economic agents. And when it comes to the path towards a more sustainable future, that is no exception. So pricing, adequate pricing, will have to play its role there. And having in mind what I've just mentioned about the importance of climate change to financial stability, this goes without saying that the Bank of Portugal needs, and central banks in general, they need to play an active role in this process as an institution that has a statutory obligation of safeguarding financial stability and to act as a financial supervisor. And this is precisely what we'll be doing, not just for our own, but also in partnership with other Eurosystem central banks, and indeed in partnership with central banks and supervisors from all over the world, since we are an active member of NGFS, which is the central banks and supervisors network for the greening of the financial system. More specifically, and as far as risks to financial stability are concerned, we are pursuing three complementary avenues. As a first avenue, we are deepening our understanding of the financial risks arising from climate change. This is why we've incorporated this topic into our research agenda, and we expect to start publishing the results soon. This avenue is supported on a strong view that, as a starting point, we need to understand what risks are already embedded both in the economic and the financial system. Or in other words, which part of the already existing assets are exposed to physically and transition risks, and how severe is that exposure already in the system. As a second avenue, we are developing also methodologies and supervisory approaches to measure and to mitigate climate-related risks in the financial system. The ECB, the European Central Bank, published last November a guide explaining how it expects banks to manage in a prudent way and transparently to disclose climate-related and environmental risks. The ECB is also conducting a economy-wide climate stress test. These results are expected to be released in July. And so this is clearly a very hot topic. As a third avenue, we must catalyze efforts to develop a comprehensive, consistent and comparable climate disclosures. Such disclosures, they are critical for the markets so that they can adequately assess, manage and price the climate risk. The Eurosystem of central banks, they are working together to start making annual harmonized climate-related disclosures for their non-monetary policy portfolios, and we expect that within the next 2 years. And given the size of the central banks' balance sheets, it is not difficult to imagine how relevant can be the decisions that relate to the portfolios of central banks, even if as a starting point it addresses only the non-monetary policy portfolio. Just to illustrate this, the Portuguese Central Bank balance sheet is approximately 200 billion euros. That is the largest of any Portuguese entity, be it public or private. And from those, almost 18 billion euros refer to non-monetary policy. The monetary policy is slightly above 100 billion. All these three avenues I've just mentioned, they need one common structural pillar. And it has to be present there at all time in order to ensure that we have the best possible outcome of every decision. And that is what I would call the fact-based decisions pillar. We don't have to go far. We can go to the Portuguese National Institute of Statistics to get inspired to do this. They have a Latin expression that is well visible there, and translated into English, it says, "In numbers, prosperity." So this is clearly related to what I just said about fact-based decisions. As you can probably easily understand, I've just scratched the surface on a topic that has all the ingredients to shape not just current but future generations. And this is clearly a topic where we tend to see first the threats we have to deal with, but I'm confident that the future will bring an equivalent or an even larger number of opportunities. And having this in mind, let me conclude by emphasizing that all of us across whole policy levels, but also and in particular at universities, must do our part to meet our shared challenges and to ensure our future. And universities, they are vital hubs of research, of bold thinking, of innovation, and also, very important, they are capable of raising uncomfortable questions. And uncomfortable questions play a vital role to find the right answers. So it goes without saying, but it's even better if we say it, that universities are essential as leading partners of global actions to limit the climate change. I'm a father of two sons, whose ages are probably around the average age of those who are watching this session. And I know by experience that today's young people, they have a strong social and environmental awareness, which also translates into positive action. So I'm confident that with strong will, with passion, with determination, we will transform our societies towards a sustainable one. With this, I conclude, and I would like to thank once more for the invitation and wish you all that you all stay safe. Thank you.